This is WFO Radio.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's Thursday, and it is race week in the world of NHRA Camping World Drag Racing. Final WFO episode of the week, and then I'm out of here. Up to Beantown, baby. But what we're going to do is we're going to speak with somebody today in our lunch hour spectacular Lunch with Lohnes. Brian Lohnes, Fox Sports' own voice of the NHRA on television and social media and everywhere, going to be joining us. Why? Because he is, as far as I know, the ultimate expert when it comes to New England Dragway and that part of the country. We are going to bar him from talking about the last Yankees-Red Sox series. You're barred, Brian. You're barred. You cannot discuss that. But everything else is on the table as we go through the lunch hour and have a good time. If you got a question, if you got a thought, by all means, chime in, share the show, be ready, and we're going to dive in. Now, before we get to Brian, I do want to tell you about the people who make it possible for me to do this show, like Total Seal Piston Rings. 2 years of the Matt Hartford reign over there. Things going pretty good. TotalSeal.com. Tomorrow morning, brand new episode of Hidden Horsepower going to drop. Larry Wallace, who is an engine builder legend in the NASCAR world, worked at Penske South. And all I could tell you that will make you interested is that they say that many of the engine rules in the rule book have the initials LW next to them, because he is the guy who innovated a lot of the things, and it wasn't against the rules. It just wasn't a rule at that point until he started doing it. You're going to love it. Check it out. Hidden Horsepower tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. and available everywhere you get your podcast after that. Why? So that you know that 40% of your engine's friction comes from piston rings, and you check out TotalSeal.com. Hartford coming in as the most recent race winner, by the way. Also, samtech.edu. The School of Automotive Machinists and Technology. Start your education at full speed. Blockhead, CNC programs, motorsport, EFI tuning. They're approved to train veterans under the GI Bill. If that's the career you're thinking about, give them a call. Check them out. Mention WFO and find out the information, because you could start your way onto a great career that, who knows, might end you up working in racing. Marvin Rodak, RodaksCoffeeandGrills.com. Hot sauces and spice rubs and grills and barbecues down there in Fort Worth, Texas. But it's the coffee that keeps me coming back. Roasted fresh per your order, all kinds of blends from around the world, the best coffee you're going to get. Not the cheap stuff, folks. This is all good stuff. Marvin Rodak, and he is a drag racer as well, as is everybody that supports this show. And finally, speaking of drag racers, Frank Hawley and Frank Hawley's Drag Racing School. You can get your alcohol license. You can go on the dragster adventure. It all depends what your goal is. If you just want to have a good time, show up with the clothes on your back and leave with an experience that will last you a lifetime. The dragster adventure, as they travel the country with their dragsters, having a great time. Later on in the show, I'll tell you how to get some WFO gear in the WFO store. But right now, let's bring on the voice and face of NHRA drag racing on Fox Sports and Fox Network, Mr. Brian Lohnes. Brian, how are you?
Hey, what's happening, Joe? Glad to be here, man.
Long time no talk. Thank you for doing this Thursday lunch with Lohnes. I got to say, though, in this case, I would have you on a regular basis, right? But I know that you are working on the web all the time on a regular basis as it is. But Blake from Ohio, one of our listeners out there last week, sent me a nice email. It's like, do you think you could get Brian Lohnes on the show? And I said, I think I can make this one happen.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And just so you know, I may have been impersonating a guy named Blake from Ohio last week. I'm just saying.
Maybe. Well, this is him right on here on the screen.
Blake, thanks for the ask, Blake. That was a solid. I owe you one.
Yeah, exactly. And Blake's going to be in Norwalk with his family, and who knows? Maybe we hang out with Blake a little bit. But I'm excited about Norwalk. I'm excited about the swing. I just found out as certain as anything gets in this world, that I'll be out there on the swing as well. So stoked. But this weekend, this is your home track. This is your home. You're inviting the NHRA Camping World into your living room, pretty much.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's be the 7th running of this race. And in some ways could have been the 8th, but obviously last year we had a myriad of issues and restrictions where it just didn't make sense to come up to New England Dragway. But extremely glad that the race is back here. I love New England Dragway. It is where I quite literally, my formative and misspent youth was up there, and to be able to hang out in the tower again this week with you guys on Friday, and then kind of navigate to the TV truck for our shows on Sunday. It's going to be great. It is. It's, not to sound like a total, homer, but it is literally my favorite weekend of the year. So it's great.
Well, it is. It's really cool. And when I went up there, I really appreciated, and I got sad. I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. Like, what would have been if Miami Hollywood Speedway had stayed open? major market, massive facility.
Yeah.
And I kind of see some of that with your locals. And as great as it is to see the Camping World Racers up there, talked to Steve yesterday, Hagen going for 4 in a row. How crazy. But the local racers appreciate being able to be a part of such a big event.
They do. And you know, it comes back to, you'll hear a lot of the racers say a lot of the same things over the course of this weekend, whether you're watching on .tv or watching our TV shows or social media coverage. This racetrack feels very different than everywhere else we go. It is, you know, everyone's like, oh, it's an old school track. Well, it really is. I mean, this is the only place we go where the timing tower is a little bitty kind of single room operation. Joe, you know this well. There's a room that should have maybe 3 or 4 people in it, and a computer will have 8 or 9 people and all the computers and stuff in it. It was an incredible place to learn to announce drag races, because not just for the location, it's, and again, not to sound like a total homer, but it is the best vantage point we have of any track in the country, because we're literally standing over the starting line.
I'm calling a timeout right now.
Okay.
You're allowed to be a total homer when you're at home. Right?
Yeah.
Like when you're at home, you know, do you like your house, Brian? Like, how's your house?
My house is okay.
How about your family? You like them?
I mean, fair to middling. I like the house better. No.
This is the weekend. It's okay to be a total homer. And you're right about the view and the vantage point. Chaotic to be in race control and the media center and the TV booth and all of these things all at the same time, especially in my early announcing days, but there is no better vantage point. You're hovering over that right lane water box.
The chaos made it an incredible place to learn to kind of do this job, because it has, in a good way, made me like impervious to a lot of things. Like when I'm doing other races, or if you're working at a place, a lot of times people will kind of creep into the room and be like, I don't want to interrupt you. It's like, no, you have no idea. I spent 10 years in a single room with no divider or anything. I mean, there was the back clock operator, you know, in a timing system, you have 2 clocks. You have the front clock where that's the operators doing the timing system, actually getting the cars entered to the computer as they come up to the starting line. And then you have the back computer where the laddering is done and the kind of nuts and bolts of the race was operated from. That position was arm's length to my left. And so that person would be sitting there with me just screaming my lungs out all day long during a typical race. And there was always people coming in and out. And it ended up being a really good thing for me, even on the TV side of things, because it really doesn't bother me to have someone in this year and someone in this year, because that was my whole life up there. There was always somebody telling me something or yelling in the background or whatever. So in a weird way, that little room definitely helped me out in ways I never would have expected before kind of doing this as a job.
Meanwhile, the computer operators never recovered from the screaming.
No, we went a lot of them because they just couldn't handle it. Yeah.
And it makes sense. Folks, if you got a question for Brian out there, by all means, let us know. And we got one already coming in from a very well-known, most recent runner-up crew chief out there on the tour. Michael Heiner wants a restaurant recommendation.
Oh, dude. Okay. Well, you've come to the right place, because this doesn't happen without knowing restaurants.
Lunch with Lohnes, guys. So this is there's always a plan, even if it's accidental.
All right. So I'll give you 2. I can give you 100 in Portsmouth, but I'll give you 2. If you want a more upscale dining experience, like not totally over the top, but kind of a very traditional, like nice dining experience, go to the Orr House, the OAR house down on the water. Spectacular food, very traditional New England dining experience. If you want to get a really, really great fish in a neat environment, go to Jumpin' Jay's Fish Cafe, which is just around the corner. Everything in Portsmouth is just around the corner. And then, of course, right on the corner, just up the street as you come into the center of Portsmouth, is like the best Irish pub you'll go to in New England, sitting right there in the corner. So you get a nice pint of Guinness there after your fish.
Awesome. Which we usually stay in the Portsmouth area, so that is part of the plan. Now, I'm going to throw you a curveball, because I don't know the answer to this, and I don't know the name. But last year, the Dick family, or 2 years ago in 2019, they brought me to the Tuckaway Tavern with. Oh, yeah. So I went there, and I could vouch for that place. It was a neat experience. But I have heard the story, like the legend of a place to get a great lobster roll that's, you know, it's somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and it's up a hill, and you don't know it's there, and there's a sign, but not really. And that's all I got. Do you know what I'm talking about? Does that ring a bell at all?
Not really. I mean, you can get a lobster roll at McDonald's. Literally, you can get a lobster roll at McDonald's here with real lobster meat in it during this time of the year. So I don't know. I mean, you cannot mess up a lobster roll. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can, but like you're not gonna. I'm sure there's like some specific place. I'm not a huge lobster roll guy. I like mine intact, so I get to go in there with the tools and tear it to pieces. But I know there's a place just across the river. On the other side of the bridge, if you go, really Portsmouth is on the water, and on the other side of the water is Maine.
Right.
So there's a bunch of places just over the bridge in Maine that are really good as well. So I don't have a secret double throwdown line on the lobster roll.
Okay, well, and this is something that I've kind of just heard bantered about. When I enter the room, people stop talking, so who knows what the story is. Here's a really good question, though, from Richard. Our masks, what's the story up there with like the masks requirement? Like to me, we're having the event, so I'm like, okay, things are obviously good enough for us to be having the event. But what about like what can we expect when we come north?
So there is no mask mandate in New Hampshire anymore. As such, there is no mask mandate on the property. You can wear a mask if you'd like to. No one's going to tell you not to do that. But there is no restriction on seating capacity. There is no restrictions on masking, or there is no mandate on wearing masks. You're not going to have to have your temperature check coming in. It's moving much more toward the environment that we remember from 2019 for sure. One of the reasons that this race was not necessarily late in being confirmed, but was a little bit later down the road of being 100% confirmed was the fact that there was some concern of what was the seating capacity going to be. And, New England Dragway, as nostalgic and cool as it is a small racetrack. It is among the smallest in terms of raw seating capacity on the tour. So like Virginia, for instance, there was going to be I believe a 30% maximum allowed at Virginia Motorsports Park. That racetrack is a very comparable size to New England Dragway, and you simply cannot have an event where you're only going to seat 30% of a capacity of that style of venue. The financial end of it for the racetrack, for the sanctioning body, it doesn't work for anybody. And so when the seating capacity restriction was removed, and of course the great Bob Tasca and Alexis DeJoria stepping up with their respective sponsors of TascaParts.com, the title sponsor, Bandero Premium Tequila, the presenting sponsor, really did pave the way for the race. So the pieces all came together, and in terms of what you have to do coming in the facility, the only thing you are mandated to do here is have a good time. That's it.
Oh, that's great. I think I can handle that. That is going to be excellent. Got a couple more questions, and then I'm gonna throw in some questions of my own. Monica says her kid AJ loved watching you on Bang Shift, which was great. You guys were out there on the the rickety thing streaming. That's one of the places we first met in the tower at New England Dragway, but then not long after at the Pro Winter warm-up in West Palm Beach. But I won't hit you with that for a while. Gary's, I'm going to get you on the record on that. No, let's talk about it now, man. Sad to hear rumors about tracks maybe going away. Not just mine, but any. It's a sign of the times, real estate through the roof. But man, it hurts when it's your track.
It hurts when it's any track for sure, and certainly when it's your own home racetrack and an important racetrack. That rumor of Palm Beach International Raceway, the rumor being that there's some speculation that Walmart or some other large global corporation may be buying that piece of property to put a distribution center of some type on because it has access to the what is it, Beeline Highway?
Beeline Highway, major road. It's already cleared. It's surrounded by wetlands, so like. You can't go here and you can't go here, but this area is already cleared. It's right across from Pratt and Whitney, so they're never going to build a house there because they're testing like jet engines and rockets all night long. But for trucks to come and go.
I mean, the good news is, if there is any at this point, you and I talked about it before we came on air, is the fact that it is still a rumor, but now it's become a rumor that's reached the public consciousness. So somebody's going to have to say something at some point here, whether it's yes or no or maybe. Somebody's going to have to make a statement. And, the drag racing media, as it were, guys like Bobby Bennett, certainly Drag Illustrated, other places like that are investigating this right now. So by hook or by crook, we're going to find out what's going on here. And I certainly do not want to see Palm Beach International Raceway go away. I mean, that's a place that has just immense amounts of history. And again, it has a very special place for you because you've raced there for so many years with success and love going there. So, let's just, I guess at this point, keep our fingers crossed and hope that what we're hearing is maybe rumors that they're trying to shop it or maybe rumors that someone was interested, but nothing's been confirmed as yet.
Well, exactly. And, I've won 3 track championships at 3 different tracks. Miami Hollywood Speedway, Moroso Motorsports Park, County Line Dragway, and all, 2 out of the 3 have given way to, different progress in one way or another. I will say this, though. Nobody owes anybody anything in this world, like really, like, fairness, and like the world should be fair. The world is not fair. I get it. But being able to have a last drag race like we did at Miami Hollywood Speedway, where we knew it was coming and they had a big event and they sent it out and let everybody show up and have that one more time. That was important. And that's something that the people at E-Town, they didn't get. And, crummy, right? Like, wow, there's no closure, no crummy. Like you lose a relative, no funeral, which people have experienced recently. I hope that that's not part of it.
I do too. I hope that best case scenario, we're talking about something that was just a rumor that bubbled up and got some traction. Worst case, I don't even want to talk about the worst case, but I hope, I hope that when we hear this, because there's a lot of situations, racetracks like Tulsa, for example, Tulsa years ago, when Keith Haney and Todd Martin took that over, the land underneath that drag strip was sold to a mining company or minerals company rather, because it sits on some like limestone deposit or some sort of mineral can be used in industrial situations. So they leased it. They were leasing that track back from that company for years and years. And eventually the company said, hey, we really don't want the property anymore. And now that threat has passed. So there are situations, there are tracks out there right now that have been quote unquote sold with the prospect of the land being developed years down the road, but they have multi-year leases to continue to operate. So I'm hoping the worst case scenario, I guess, for me would be that, when you hear, okay, well, it's the worst case is it's sold and it's never going to open again, which is it's opening and operating now, as we mentioned, that the events are being added to the schedule for this year and stuff like that. So let's move on to something happier, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I know. It's a common. Okay. So, Atco last Saturday night, Gary Pritchett in Bunny's car, Joe Morrison, like that Saturday night, the importance of the Saturday night drag race show to a local community. I just have been thinking about it a lot. That we're warming our way out of the negative territory, Brian, with like a generally positive thing. I just thought it's cool. Gary going to be out there. Talked to Steve yesterday as we took over his Facebook page. Has won 2 in a row. They really have built a chemistry that's tough to beat. They've got a huge lead. They've dominated the season so far. They've dominated the last several seasons, 3 championships in a row. Just, as you watch that team continue to dominate, who can rival them? Who can rival this Capco team yet?
I've always said I always talk about drag racing, especially in a Top Fuel or Nitro Funny Car situation, with 4 Ps. You have people, you have processes, and you have parts, and that equals performance. And there's no greater example of that than the Capco team and Steve Torrance and his operation. They have a team of people that they have hired that are of incredible talent that they have kept together. So there's your people aspect of it. Your procedures aspect of it is they do a flawless job servicing those race cars. And part of it is because they've had more repetition and more practice than anybody else. In drag racing, this type of success begats more success, because the more you get to work on the car, the more you get to turn it around, the more you get to refine your process, the better it's going to get. And then the parts part of it is, the story that Steve Torrance and his team have helped to almost rewrite the blueprint of how to be successful in professional drag racing, where you don't need to own a farm of CNC machines. You can go to the industry that supplies this sport, buy competitive parts, use them in the proper way, and perform better than everybody else. And are there people that can rival them? Absolutely. But what they've done, and I think when we look back on what this team has done in history, 20 years down the road, we're not going to see it for the small accomplishments of what they've done. We're going to look at this at kind of an umbrella situation, because they have given a blueprint, or they've developed a blueprint that can be repeated. Unfortunately, for everybody else, no one's actually been able to do it as good as they have. And there's no mystery to it. That's the fun part about it for me. This isn't some mysterious speed secret they have. This isn't Dale Armstrong developing some crazy thing in the back room that no one knows about. This is right there in front of God and everybody to look at, but it's so important to have every element of it right. They're the only ones that have done it to this level. Now, Can Antron Brown's team compete with them? Absolutely. We saw them do it. We saw that great final round earlier in the season, where Antron picking up the win and really kind of, in my opinion, reestablishing himself in a lot of different ways. Obviously, the Vegas win was good, but this was another one. Head-to-head with Steve in a final. That was big. I look at Justin Ashley's team. I think that what we're seeing there is just we're seeing a little bit of evolution. They have, they put great people together, and they're in that process of getting everything refined. But again, when we look at his individual performance in the race car, much like Doug Coletta, they're there. I mean,
right.
if this was simply just driver based, those two guys and Antron would be slugging it out every week. But there is the whole team element of it, and there is that precision element of it. Coletta Motorsports, we see Sean Langdon, who is currently third in points and almost a quiet third to me. I mean, he's been impressive. He's won, but you look at the points, you go, wow, Langdon's in third. Okay. And then we look at Doug's car. And I said this on our NHRA Insider podcast the other day, but Doug's final round appearance in Houston had to have been the most unsatisfying final round appearance of his career, if there is such a thing. The car never went over 300 miles an hour once the whole weekend.
Wow.
Not one time. So there, to me, and you saw the result of that in the final, right? In the final, they really stepped on it and they smoked the tires, and that's what happens when you're trying to match wits and trying to match performance with the Capco team. But the Coletta Motorsports Group certainly has the elements in place. They're looking to take that next step, and the same could be said about Ashley and Antron, in my opinion. Leah and that team, it's been a struggle. They've had 3 first-round losses in a row. Also capable. I had a math teacher one time. You'd raise your hand and say, "Can I go to the bathroom?" And the guy said, "I don't know. Can you?"
Yes.
Can you go to the bathroom?
I think all teachers say that.
And it's like, can Leah's team run with Steve? Absolutely. Will they? Is it totally different, or do they have the wherewithal to put it all together? We'll find out. It's just been an incredible thing. And I know people are like, "Oh, I can't believe this guy keeps winning." It's like, I can. I can believe it.
Well, I can and I can and I can't. It's just this amazing story of, like you said, the rich get richer, right? Like once you learn how to do it, you're gaining all that extra data, gaining the extra runs. But like, what are they doing that Coletta Motorsports is incapable of? They're measuring the parts, they're buying the parts, they're working people in and out, they're replacing parts, life cycles. There's new personnel over there, Ronnie Thompson at Coletta. So who knows, there's maybe some changing from one strategy to the next in terms of philosophy. But I don't want to minimize it because it's amazing the cars go down the track at all, but what are they doing? Let's do it. Success leaves tracks. Like, let's just copy what the heck they're doing. What are they doing? What parts do they have? Let's get those parts. What chassis do they have? Let's get those chassis. Who are some of their people? Let's hire them away as best as we can, which is probably not going to happen. But that's what this run has gone so long. Maybe they have figured out something that other people should emulate.
I mean, the blessing and the curse of our sport on so many levels, including on the media side of things, is that so much of what happens to actually make you good at it is invisible. So much actually happens to make you successful, to make you a multi-time world champion, to absolutely dominate a category that seems impossible to dominate, happens away from TV cameras, happens away from our eyeballs, happens in a shop in Brownsburg, Indiana. And, I don't know who I'm sure there would be people that do disagree with me here, but I would argue that basically every single race that Steve Torrence and that team has won, and Billy Torrence and that team has won, they've won it before they pulled in the gate. We don't look at that team and say, "Wow, man, look what they had to do this week." And they had to swap 5 motors, and they had to do this, that, the other thing. And Steve had to pedal the car 3 rounds, and he was late by this. No. Those aren't even conversations we have about the Capco team, because they never put themselves in that spot. And nobody's perfect, obviously, but they're pretty damn close.
You know what they do that to me is important, and I want to tie it to New England Dragway and the 2006-2007 winner of the race. And I want to know if you were there, Bobby Lagana and Dominic, of course, these, passionate drag racers who prioritize love of the game and fun. The horn after they win. They've got all of these things that they do that may seem trivial, but it builds chemistry. It builds cohesiveness. There's this like love for life that is happening with those guys. And the music is always loud. They're a professional team, but they're kind of casual in their demeanor. And I just think that all of those things working together. So talk a little bit about Bobby Lagana, and were you at the 2006, 2007 races that he won out there at New England Dragway?
Absolutely, I was. In fact, this was not on the IHRA tour, but this was a Saturday night show at New England Dragway. One of the coolest moments, a top 5 moment for me in my entire, history in this sport and life in this sport. The first night they match raced each other at Epping, and they made side-by-side 300-mile-an-hour runs for the first time in their respective careers. And it was incredible because their entire family was there. The uncles, dad, everybody was on the property. The place was packed, and it just went ape. I mean, when they went down through there in each car over 300 miles an hour, the place went nuts. They went nuts at the top end. It was an emotional thing for them, and really kind of a signature family moment. Now we go back and look at, Bobby's competition career with the IHRA. I think what's so interesting about the nexus of people that are involved in the Capco teams, especially when we talk about the Laganas, is we all know their story. They raced fuel cars with a budget that most of those teams were spending more on lunch than these guys were spending to run an entire race weekend. They were hauling the thing to the racetrack on a ramp truck for many years. Then they graduated to a dually truck. It was a big deal. But that's the type of education you can't pay for. And that's the type of thing that Bobby and Dom and Richard Hogan in many ways bring to the racetrack. I mean, Hogan's a guy that was educated at the altar of Don Garlits, so much of it is, what's the old saying? A confident man needs to tell no one that he's confident, right? And so when we talk about the music, when we talk about their approach to this sport, when we talk about how they show up to the racetrack, and they are 100% professional. When it's time to go racing, those guys, yeah, the music may be loud, but when you look at them doing their jobs, they are mercenary levels of serious. When the job's done and they succeed at the job, they have a good time.
Exactly.
And so I think one of their secrets, whether they know it or not, is that approach, because that approach puts other people on their back foot, because people almost overcompensate. They go, okay, those guys can have the music real loud, then we're going to have the music off. We're going to do it gets in people's heads. We see it in every sport. You see how, the most memorable teams, and no matter what city you're from, no matter what sport you love, the most memorable teams you have through your life, whether they won championships or were just successful teams, are the ones that had some sort of a hook. For me, you're a Yankees guy, I'm a Red Sox guy. It's just the nature of who we are. But,
yes,
back when those guys all grew the stupid beards, and Johnny Damon, was Damon's disciples out in the outfield. And it was just, that group of guys was great because they were fun. And it was the same thing. When they showed up to the ballpark, lock it down and win the game. When the game's over, they're doing swan dives off bars in Boston into crowds of people. It was fun, and they made it fun. And by doing that, they won a World Series.
Well, and to that point, talking about Yankees, Red Sox, or whatever, I always judge our teams. The last time we had a good team, we went to the ALCS. We had stuff. We had that whole thumbs down thing. There was a character. There was like a little bit of a fight back against the world kind of thing. And you got to have that. Is there another team in Top Fuel that has a character at all? Right? Like the Capco team has a character. We just described it. Who else has a character about their team?
Yeah, I mean, I think in different things are going to work for different people. I'm not saying everybody should show up there and act like the Capco guys, because that's not what everybody's personality is. But I think when I look at, an Antron Brown team, and I see a quiet strength to that team. Mark Oswald, one of the greatest of all time as a racer, was the most level, emotional guy ever. You watch Mark Oswald from the early 80s when he's racing for Candies and Hughes. You watch him and listen to him when he talks about tuning a race car, when he works with Brian Karate. Brian Karate also not a guy who's going to be yelling and screaming about things. Brad, the car chief on that thing, not a guy who's going to be yelling and screaming at things. So they have an approach, and their approach is to maintain this level keel. And Antron is an excitable guy, but he also does not let his kind of emotions get out of whack. He gets very excited when he wins, like everybody does. But even in the moments when he was insanely frustrated over the last several seasons, you didn't see that guy, chucking his helmet, throwing things, going crazy.
Never.
Because that's just the way that they operate. Somebody just mentioned Scott Palmer. Sure, Scott Palmer's team has a great attitude, and they are like embracing the fact that they're underdogs, embracing the fact that they don't operate on the normal schedule that everybody else does. They don't operate on the normal budgets and windows that everybody else does, and they don't apologize for it, nor should they. I always see the Coletta guys as these, not freewheeling, but I see them as a freewheeling type of operation, and I mean that in a positive way. I'm not saying that they're not serious; they
Sure.
clearly are.
The dog pile, for instance.
Championship level contenders, competitors, they have a signature deal with the dog pile. So yeah, there are people out there that have, everybody's got an identity, and some teams I think are still maybe looking for it to some degree, but everybody's got one.
Exactly. And Nitro Joe Morrison is out there, by the way, saying, hey, Leverage Racing, man, we got a character. We just don't have the money. Not on the level yet. And the answer is yet. Like, they are working. Like, Joe is doing some things. They'll be racing this weekend. He sent me some cool shots from their event this past weekend out there with Gary and everybody at ATCO. That is kind of cool. We'll see. Ryan Ayler's team has got a good character going on. Paul Dagrapont, by the way, Pro Mod Racer, was the one who was saying about Scott Palmer. No, I agree. I think it's important to have those things.
Well, and I really like Ryan Ayler's approach. I like the fact that he's got no problem saying what's on his mind. I got no problem. I love the fact that he is very. Did
he challenge you to a race?
Yeah, he said you and I are going to have some sort of a double throwdown.
Are you in?
Hell yeah!
Are you in for that? But I mean, did he tell you the date? Are you in? Are you in?
I've not gotten a date. I have gotten a generalized invite, but I've not gotten a date.
Okay. Well, I think a date has been settled. We'll talk about it off the air. But yeah, this dude challenged me on WFO, which come on, man. Of course, I'll drive across the state. You got to fly in, so it's a little more complex for you. But yeah, what's up with that flying, Ryan? Don't do that. That's a mistake. I might not beat you, but you'll remember me, right? Like right. One way or another. You'll
a couple of licks it anyway. Yeah.
All right, let's move over to Funny Car a little bit because I do want to spend a little time talking about the local racers, but and of course Pro Stock. But I'm thinking about Alexis DeJoria. You mentioned how Bobby Tasca and Alexis step up to support this race, and yeah, we got short fields, but which is annoying. And your thoughts on that? I always attribute it to the complexity of getting there. It's not only is it very far from many of the teams, but the barriers just to get through the most densely populated portion of our country is a real challenge in a regular car, let alone tractor trailers, et cetera, and so on. Maybe I'm wrong, but for those two to support the race, that's a big deal. And Alexis feels like Del Worsham and Nikki got that car close.
They do. No doubt about that. So I think a couple things. One is, yes, New England Dragway is definitely on an island in a good scenario, and it's on a mega island when we don't have a Virginia. If we were going from Virginia up to Epping, now you're talking about basically a day tow. Not the most pleasurable tow in the world, but you're talking about a day's drive to get up there. Now we're talking about kind of a one-way trip up and out and back to whence you came. So there's that. Obviously, when Englishtown was around, it made a lot of sense because now you're only talking about 3.5 hours or so, 4 hours, 5 maybe if you run into traffic. So yeah, there is a definite geographical factor involved in that, and frankly, there always has been. I mean, this track's been open since 1966, and this has been a factor in New England Dragway's history since 1966. Obviously, the Canadian border being closed doesn't help things from our friends from the north. Not that we have a ton of fuel cars up there, but you have a lot of sportsman racers, tons of them that come down from Canada to compete as well. So that's kind of two things to consider. On the car counts, absolutely. It's disappointing to some degree. People are freaking out, but then I point them to Norwalk, and we already have bumper crops of cars. I think 18 or 19 already in both classes there, and Pro Stock will be over 20. So one of the things, and I'm not spinning this into a positive, trust me, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, awesome that we have this many cars. But what I will say is this: to some degree, what the fans will see this weekend is almost an all-star style event, because what you've gotten are all the teams, with a couple small exceptions, all the teams running the full schedule and chasing a world championship. There is nowhere to hide from anybody with the number of cars we have coming to this race. So what I'm telling you is that you're going to see very fast cars because the weather is exceptional this weekend. And two, right off Jump Street in the first round, you're going to see people who are jockeying for points position at this point in the year, which they are doing, having to face each other down very quickly. So I do think that to some degree, when we boil it down, for the most part, Joe Morrison being a welcome and notable exception to this. The teams that are out there trying to claw their eyeballs out to win a world championship are going to have to step up and deliver really right off the bat. And in Nitro Funny Car, what's entirely different than Top Fuel, nobody has really established himself as the dominant force in the category yet. Bob Tasker won a couple of races, of course, went back to back. He wants this race more than anything. You know, his grandfather's face is literally on the side of the timing tower up there. I mean, it's where he started racing. It's where he drove a bunch of stuff over the years. You know, as far as Alexis's car goes, that car has the third quickest Sunday average elapsed time in the entire category. And, you know, if there's something that would help is taking the reaction time average and shrinking it. And that would immensely help that program. And again, I'm not taking a shot at anybody here. Alexis, I respect the hell out of her. What she went through last year, the fires, the explosion, she got right back in those race cars and competed. But to take that car to the next step, I do feel like a little bit more aggressive nature on the starting line is going to help them because it is performing elapsed time-wise. And if she can now kind of step up her side of it as they've stepped up theirs, I think you're going to see that car, you know, as a even bigger factor than it already is.
I think she will, by the way. I think that you can't work on your reaction times if the car's not going down the racetrack and you don't feel confident in what's going on. Plus, she took some time off. Her big return was a truncated COVID pandemic year. They haven't got into a groove until now, and I expect Alexis was always known as a good driver.
Oh,
so I feel like
Nationals. I'm definitely not saying that she's a bad driver. I'm just saying for that team to really say, okay, like we're now a top 3 organization. We're now a top 3 contending factor. Just the reaction time average. And, you know, everybody's going to step on it because that's what happens over the course of the year. The crew chiefs get more comfortable with what they're doing. They get their clutch program lined up. We're going to get into this stretch now where we get busy with multiple races back to back to back. And maybe that's the time for her. Getting the repetition and getting the week-to-week racing done and getting that level of comfort in the seat. So it's interesting. It's interesting to me because when you really start to get down to brass tacks on what's working and what isn't for some of these teams, you can find the numbers don't lie, you know, for anybody, for a stock eliminator driver, a funny car driver, nobody. When you actually go in there and look at some detailed information about what's going on, you can start to pick out some things and go, just like the teams do. They say, okay, we just got to get better here. We got to get better here. So
exactly. It's interesting to me, like some of the comments out there, like Chili, and no disrespect to this, but with short fields, I would love to see NHRA legal nostalgia cars or top alcohol funny car be allowed to fill in. Like Scott says, do you think funny car chaos is pulling away from the funny car attendance? And the answer to me, and you know, it's worth talking about a little bit. You can't just let anyone with a flip top funny car into the Camping World Drag Racing Series. I don't think that works. You can't just run all funny cars at the Camping World level, but you know, maybe you can, but that's not the way the rules are set up.
Yeah, a couple factors here. One, I don't think Funny Car Chaos is taking any, Camping World Series Nitro Funny Cars away from New England Dragway. They're going to have a killer program. They have been killing it this year, and their program, Joe, is just what you described. It is like literally show up with a funny car, whether it's got turbos, whether it runs on gasoline, whether it runs on tequila, perfume. It doesn't matter. Show up and run the car, and it's a great program that is providing what I believe to be an incredible base of funny car racers that eventually will want to evolve their program. What, not to say everybody's going to go race NHRA Camping World Series, but this is exactly what drag racing needs: is as many outfits and organizations and races that get people out of the garage and onto the racetrack to move stuff ahead. In terms of allowing, you know, other combinations and other things into the category, I don't agree with that. I don't think it is. I will use factual basis for this. When I was with IHRA for at least one season, maybe a couple seasons, they allowed injected nitro dragsters to run Top Fuel. And they basically took the minimum weights away. They gave them, you know, you could run 100% nitro basically. I don't think there was any minimum weight. And we did have a few cars show up to participate in that program. And it really, other than being able to look at a qualifying sheet and see some extra names on it, it really didn't move the needle. It didn't really do much of anything. And frankly, it took the racers that did participate out of their normal tuning window and comfort zone and created, I would say some unnecessary extra work for the safety team at that time to clean the racetrack up. So I do feel as though, as weird as it is to say, this should be hard. And it is professional racing. And I say this a lot because you get a lot of people like, they had 97 top fuel cars show up at the 1972 U.S. Nationals. And I get it. But here's what happens. Those 97 cars that showed up, it's great. 32 of them qualified. You look at the qualifying sheet, there's about 3/4 of a second between number 1 and 32. So, okay, fine. That's to me not much of a show. But it's like, I don't know. You can look at any motorsport. It's like, well, if F1 short some cars on the grid 1 week, should they allow like Formula 2000 or Formula 4 cars? And it doesn't make a lot of sense, and you end up complicating things unnecessarily. In my mind, I believe at this point in our sport, we're in this transition period. We're in a period of transition from the mega team to the independent or loosely affiliated 2-car team as being what the model is going forward. I feel as though, as unreasonable as these cars are to race and as expensive and stuff as they are, I do feel like the needle is moving back towards a situation where you do not have to incur incredible budgets, and and it's going to be a couple of seasons. I do feel like it's going to be a couple of seasons, but when we look around and see the Joe Morrisons of the world, we see Artie Allen, we see Lee Calloway, we see Kyle Wurtzel, and we don't see these guys every race, but when they show up, they have good parts and they compete. I think that's what we're moving towards. I honestly believe, I think in a couple seasons, we're going to see 10, 12 full-time rock and roll pros and top fuel nitro funny car. And we're going to see a lot of regional style competitors that hit however many races they can a year. And I have no problem with that. I think when we look at what motorsports is in the world, in the country right now, I think the more sport of the common man we can be in drag racing, which is really where we came from, I think the better. And I do want it to be the sport of the common man that has great sponsorships and is out there putting on a great show going 300 miles an hour. But I want this to continue to be an accessible thing for the kid in the junior dragster.
Well, exactly. And that's it. Like, what is this thing going to be 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? It's got to be a professional thing. It's professionalism, like, being out we got cars and we're going, that's great. But there has to be a pinnacle. Pyramid has a top. Yeah. And that's what NHRA Top Fuel and Funny Car and Pro Stock is. Michael Heiner is out there, says no fillers for any classes. I agree, Brian, on this. It's just like adding weight to the mountain motor cars and letting them run Pro Stock. No way that works. We got to make the sport viable. And Geron is out there, and he says that the only thing that needs to not happen is a knee-jerk reaction to one race. I feel like people are talking about it on the show is giving it too much energy. Thank you, Geron, for programming the show. But he's also right. It's just it's a tough situation. Post-pandemic, no race before it, a lot of things coming together to have a short field at this race. But someone had asked a little bit earlier, though, what about your thought on the buy runs on the ladder? Like, we're going to have 12 cars in Top Fuel, so no buy runs?
Oh, no, there are. It's in the semis.
Ah, there you go. Oh, down to 2 for 1.
Yeah. So it's it presents some very interesting situations. And frankly, I don't know if I've ever actually called a race with a 13-car ladder. So that's going to be the whole thing. And Mike Heiner mentioned adding weight to the mountain motor car and having, I think you were there too, when they were working on that scenario and they had Brad Waddell come out one race and they made him run a smaller tire and put a bunch of weight in the car. And it was like 90 degrees out and he was still just absolutely hauling ass. They went, okay, well, this experiment needs to kind of end today. And it did. And listen, I'm all for, you got to try stuff out. You got to think outside the box. There is no reason that we should just sit still and look at everything and say, well, this is how it's always going to be, because that's never what it is in racing. You're always going to have some evolution or some movement here, there, or anywhere. But if there is a category that I think is in as good a shape or better shape that it's been in years, it's Pro Stock.
Stock, baby. Pro Stock. Let's go there. Heiner and Hartford in the final round. 2 engine lease customers from KB battling it out for a victory in Houston. And we've seen it over the years, like the engine lease. Yeah, you could say there's always issues and problems. Too many Camaros. Fernando Quadra not going to be there this weekend. He's hurt his primary engine. I was texting with him, but he'll be back in Norwalk. But wow, from 5 years ago to now, Pro Stock has completely turned around. Not only is it extremely healthy, but it's extremely competitive top to bottom and has been very fun to watch.
And it's young for the most part. Aaron Stanfield, Mason McGahey, Kyle Koretsky. Kramer's not some old man either. He's a great driver. And that final in Houston was a weird one because both cars went out and just rattled the hell out of the tires. And, it was interesting. I was going to try to catch up with Matt and Mike this weekend just to talk to him. And I don't know if it was because the track tightened way up. I'm not sure what it was, but yeah, that was an odd pro stock final. But again, Derek Kramer, we look at where he is in the points and you go, hey, wait a second, look at this guy. It's been a season of consistency. And I always, in seasons like this, I look back at Troy Coughlin Jr. winning the Pro Mod Championship a few years ago. He never won a race. But what he did was he went at least 2 rounds to the semis and several finals. And he did it the old-fashioned way, like a real lunch pail kind of ham and egger way to win a championship, which I have a lot of respect for because, no, you might not have been, quote-unquote, the best on any given weekend, but you were better than the majority of everybody on every weekend.
Exactly. And thinking about Greg Anderson and Erica, kind of the start of the season, those two were dominating. GA has run into back-to-back races where he's had an 080 reaction time. He's won this race twice. He's one of like 2 drivers who have won multiple pro stock races at New England Dragway. The other, Frank Iaconio, thank you, Winlight News, for that stat way back in 1979 and 1980. Thank you, Kelly. But GA, I would imagine he could gnaw through a tree trunk right now, just wanting to get back to the racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at what that first session is going to be tomorrow evening. Pro stock cars should be on the racetrack at I think about 5:30, 5:45 is what the plan is. High temperature tomorrow, I believe, isn't even going to make 70 degrees. If it is, maybe just at 70. So really, by the time we get to pro stock at 5:30, you're probably going to be in the high 60s. It's going to be dry. The track record in pro stock is at New England Dragway. I'm going to look on my cheat sheet right now that I have in my notes here. Track record at Epping is 6:48, which is, maybe not be reachable. You saw runs in the 6:40s down there at Orlando early in the year, but that was pretty wildly crazy conditions. And the speed record, of course, we're not going to get there yet because we haven't got there yet anywhere. But 2:14.25 is the speed record at Epping. But, it's a great surface. And for Greg, we always talk about this stuff as being inevitable. And, I think largely it is to this degree. He needs one to tie WJ. Would have loved to have seen it happen in Atlanta. Just the kind of poetry of that would have been very cool. But hey, listen, anywhere he gets it, he'll take it. And we'll see. It proves again the fact that you can have a nasty fast car, which he has had number 1 qualifier at every single race except for the last one where he's number 2 qualifier. But it shows the human element of that category all the time. The 80 light killing him. Yeah.
Brutal. But that opens the door for others. And you mentioned Aaron Stanfield. He's going to win a race. And hey, today is Derek Kramer's birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Derek. Michael Heiner, go get this guy a win this weekend for his birthday. You owe it to him. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. A very overused racing cliche. The local racers. All right, the guys and gals out there. Let's talk about one in very particular that is close to you. This guy. That's Bob Lohnes, your dad, Super Street, my favorite category because I have aspirations to run it somewhere, someday, somehow with something, hopefully my own car. But your dad, if memory serves me right, didn't he go three rounds in 2019? Like he was rolling.
He raced his way into Sunday 2019. That photo from the winner's circle is from just a few weeks ago. He won a local Super Street Series event up there, so he's ready to rock and roll in that car. And it was cool. It was a great moment for he and my mom up there, and just a fun way to get yourself excited for this national event. He's been running some of the Mid-Atlantic Super Street Series. Was down in Maple Grove with that series a few weeks ago. So it's cool. His love of drag racing translated to me. And even though he was not, when I was born, he stopped racing for several years, but it's how I became a fan. It's how I came to love cars, because it was always muscle cars and stuff getting worked on at the house. And we always had the broadcast on television, and it's cool. It's a neat thing to see him, certainly a neat thing to see him take that victory and see if he can go deep on Sunday this year. It'd be awesome. I'd lose my mind. I'll be in the TV truck down there, but you'll hear me screaming in the tower. Rightfully so.
And it's just so amazing, those connections. You can't plan for anything, but just to see your dad go rounds. What about some of the others though? Just pick a couple, like a name that sticks out in my mind, right? Because Hong Lee, right? This guy's running multiple cars. He's out there. I rode the golf cart with Brian Lohnes the first couple of times. Each year we usually end up going for a golf cart ride, right? And it's like going this guy's like the mayor, the chairman of the board out there, right? Like, hey, Brian. It's very fun and funny to see Caesar going back to Rome, right? And it's just the fun, but I get to meet people, and these are your buds, right? But they're very serious racers, and everyone's got, there's name situations like, if they're from the Canadian side of the border, use the French version. If they're from the American side, don't use the French version, right? Like, there's all kinds of different little things. It's a very serious racing community. Shout out some people that are great racers that we could see go some rounds.
Oh, sure. So Hong Lee, you have Hong Lee Jr. and Senior. So Hong Lee Senior is still competing, has been racing at Epping for over 50 years. And he's been doing it, I think, almost the whole time in the same 69 Camaro. Big tire, kind of just not a car that would stop you in the pits for its beauty or its complexity. But Hong Lee, such a good bracket racer through the decades, is in the New England Hot Rod Hall of Fame, which is encapsulated when you come into New England Dragway. There's a large piece of granite that has been shaped like the state of New Hampshire, and on that granite is a series of plaques for all the people that have been inducted into the New England Hot Rod Hall of Fame, and he's in there. We see Dave Miller, Brandon Miller, Becky Miller. The entire Miller family is incredible racers out of Connecticut. Dave has occasionally driven pro stock with Alan Brzezinski's team, but he is a killer top sportsman racer. Becky is an exceptional index and bracket racer in her dragster. And then Brandon, their son, has been racking up win lights as well. So from the junior dragster ranks and now into full-size cars, they are very hardcore racers. They're always fun to watch. There's a guy named Wayne Horton that was a dominating force in bracket racing on the local scene, and even regionally when big money bracket racing first got going. Atco and the Gambardella series in New Jersey and E-Town were really the places a lot of guys would go. And Wayne Horton was one of the guys that I remember late 90s, early 2000s when I was at New England Dragway getting going. He would travel more than the average local racer, and he would go down there and win. And he would come back and destroy people on Sundays. And then he would come up in the tower and we get into arguments because I was also the race director about various things too. But as all things go, you smile about that stuff now and you talk about it. And I'm guessing Wayne will probably be in somebody's car up there this weekend. He's always a fun guy for me to watch. Nick Maloney, and this is great. So yeah, Wayne Horton, there you go. Nick Maloney, also incredibly talented racer. Justin Lopes, yes. Lopes Super Gas racer, has that red Nova with the big motor in it that runs huge mile an hour. Justin's a great racer. I believe D1, was he D1 champ last year? He was a very strong force, and he was actually up there in the national points last year as well. We can go right down the road. We can talk about the Willard family. You have Jess Willard, now Jess Stadolski, who was a jet car racer, drove Al Hanna's jet cars, and she is a great racer. Her brother Nick, another guy who was kind of on the Wayne Horton level, and their dad Larry, who is still at it, much like Hong Lee, been there for decades. It is a fun race for me on the professional side, obviously, because you get to make the show and do all the stuff. But the same rules apply to sportsman racing and in a lot of ways at New England Dragway than as we talk about with the pro categories, meaning it is perhaps a more regionally concentrated Lucas Oil Series race than any that you're going to run into. We don't necessarily see the folks towing in from Texas or California or from Florida. We see a lot of D1 racers racing their national event to try to get their national event Wally. I think that's kind of special as well, because not every division has the ability to kind of really have almost intramural competition, right? You don't necessarily look around the pits if you're a sportsman racer and go, I don't know who that guy is. I don't know what that guy's doing. Everybody knows everybody. It's like living in a small town. So you know what that guy's going to try to do to you at the finish line. You're going to try to do something else. It makes fun. And yeah, Earl Nichols bringing up, of course, the Sawyer family. Yeah. Ryan
Super Street. He's killer.
Yeah. I've lost to all of them. I lost to every person I mentioned just beat me like a rented mule over the years at New England Dragway in bracket racing during my illustrious and short career as a bracket racing competitor with my dad until I gave up the seat, picked up the microphone, and that was the best decision I think I ever made. Yeah,
but you do have a Trip Zero reaction time slip signed by Don Garlitz, which is good. Oh, it's right here. Here it is. Look at this, everybody.
Okay, so I keep this because when I have a bad day, I always look at it. So this is a time slip that is signed by Don Garlitz.
Here it is, back when it was 500. Look at that.
53. This was at the Super Chevy show at New England Dragway in
2000,
21 years ago. and I made it to a final round at that race. One of the very, very few that I ever graced the starting line of.
Wait, well, can we see the rest of the slip? You had a perfect reaction time, and you said you made the final round, but you didn't say that you won the race. And so what happened?
This was the semifinal.
Oh, okay. There it is. There it is.
This is what you call an ugly win.
Okay.
Perfect light bailed me out.
Perfect light bailed you out, and he's 47. You're perfect. You're quite a bit over. Looks like taking a lot.
Oh, I took it all.
What happened in the final?
I believe I used up every ounce of talent on that perfect light.
I got you.
Hey. The final round light was not perfect.
Okay. Well, you got scared. You're like, oh, I don't want to go red in the final. But still, it's a great story. Look, we're still milking that thing for a long time. All right, want to let you go, but a couple more questions, just things that I want to know. You know, I was doing the Garlits Hall of Fame thing, and a gentleman comes up to me. I was kind of getting ready beforehand. The doors hadn't opened. I'm sitting there in my tux, and a gentleman comes over, and he's like, hello, my name's Jack Doyle. And
Jack Doyle.
Exactly. And this guy was a big part of New England Dragway existing. I'd love for you to tell that story. You know, the godfather of New England Dragway. How true is that? I know it was like a car club, a collective, but I'm under the understanding he's in Garlits Hall of Fame. And, you know, like when car clubs were fighting each other, he organized it to build a track by the racers for the racers. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So you had, so basically the really short story of how New England Dragway came to exist is you had several temporary drag strips being used in New England, most notably Sanford, Maine. That was the biggest quote unquote drag strip at the time in the early 60s. There was a bunch of other locations, Milton, Vermont, and other ones. But Sanford, Maine was an airport, and they would have to drag all their stuff up there, and they'd set it all up, and they'd race, and then they'd take it all down again and go home. And it was Sanford, Maine's not really as far away from things as Epping is. Sanford, Maine's even farther than that. So they organized all the hot rod clubs into what was called the New England Hot Rod Council. And the New England Hot Rod Council became this collective of car clubs that would raise money, that would raise funding, that had a goal of building a drag strip. And so in 1966, late 65, they find this piece of land that is actually, when you go to New England Dragway, you're actually, depending on what side of the track you're in one town or the other. If you're on the pit side, you're in Epping. If you're on the other side, you're in Brentwood, New Hampshire. But they buy this big piece of property, and they go to town to build it. You had Cy Botham, Jack Doyle, Gil Corraine were kind of the three main guys that actually ran the track when it opened, and three of the huge driving forces to get it done. Cy Botham has since passed away. Gil Corraine and Jack are still with us. But Cy's family owned a fairly successful kind of mechanical industrial business. So he was able to leverage some of his family money to help with the racetrack as well. His mother, known as Ma Cy Botham, was a huge, huge part of the racetrack. She was there every weekend and maybe loved drag racing even more than the kids that were participating. So Ma Cy Botham has a very unique place in New England drag racing and hot rodding history. And lastly, in the 1960s, one of the hot ticket things to have at any real good drag strip was roller starters. So rather than push starting your top fuel car, you could put this top fuel car on rollers, and it would spin the tires up, the engine would light off, and then you pull off the rollers and go stage the car and run. It sped up the program, made everything good. The rollers at New England Dragway, which are rumored to be buried in a trench somewhere in the property, were powered by the DeSoto Hemi in Ma Cy Botham's car. They took the engine out of her car and used it to power the roller starters at New England Dragway. So, but yeah, so Jack Doyle, very rightfully in the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame, certainly in the New England Hot Rod Hall of Fame. And he was a racer as well. He campaigned a very good top gas dragster known as the Slider that was driven by Don Roberts, most notably, and other racers across the course of time. But yeah, that Slider car during the late 60s was capable of qualifying for and even winning rounds in top fuel match races. It was a really, really nice car.
Awesome. Great stuff. Hey, Joe Morrison out there wants to say thanks for the recommendation. Jim Campbell and he will be at Telly's tonight for a Racers to the Rescue event. And for those that don't know, Joe Morrison has put together like a Racers to the Rescue because of the pandemic. Like, hey, we're coming to your town. We're going to pick a business. We're going to show up at the business. We're going to make a big fuss about the business, and everybody is going to come out. Joe, why don't you put the address up there too? If you're going to put us, where are you going to be? They're going to be there 7:00 tonight. Where's Telly's, Brian?
Telly's is, you could almost throw a rock and hit it from the drag strip. So when Joe got with me, he said, hey, who should I talk to? What should I do up here? I said, Telly's. Here's why. Telly's is a restaurant. It burned down. It's since been rebuilt, but it is the spot. When you went racing at New England Dragway, when you got done on Sunday, everybody went to Telly's. And depending on how far away you were going home, you had a couple beers or you didn't. You ate your dinner, you laughed a couple. You told everybody and lied why you lost that round, and then you went home that night. And so if you are attending the New England Nationals, I cannot recommend a more New England Dragway experience than going to Telly's, getting some fried clams, getting some French fries, having a couple beers. You will be surrounded by racers.
That is awesome. And do that tonight. Joe Morrison's going to be there. Jim Campbell's going to be there with their Racers to the Rescue program, which is great, like trying to generate business for local businesses around drag strips. Brian, this has been fantastic. Any final thoughts, anything else? We could go on and on. I had Kepner on the show last week, which was great. I know you guys have got a great connection. He's offered to come on again in the future. We didn't even talk about his drag strip project, which I know you have been a part of, kind of locating things. So another reason for Brett to come back. But any final thoughts, things for people as they get ready to come to your hometown? I hope this can be a race that anyone in the Northeast, E-Town to New England, it's kind of far, but we haven't had drag racing in so long in that part of the country. It's reawakening post-pandemic. Come out to the drags. But final thought, take it away.
The excitement's palpable. I live about 80 miles from the drag strip. I have people around here talking about the race. Everybody knows it's going to be happening, and I expect it to be sellout crowds, bumper crop of people all weekend. I would say, hey, please, if you're not going to be there, please tune in and watch. We're going to be on noontime Sunday for qualifying. It's 12 to 1:30 on FS1. And then at 1:30, you're going to switch over to the broadcast network because we are on national live television this week from 1:30 to 4:30 Sunday on Fox, the same Fox you watch the NFL on, the same Fox you watch Family Guy, The Simpsons, whatever. I can tell you that just personally for me and all of us that work on the show, like it is different. Like we all grab another gear when you're going to be, and there's nothing diminishing about being on FS1. That's really our home. We're lucky enough to have 8 broadcast shows this year. But when you're going to have at least 1 million people watching, it makes everybody get into the game a little bit more.
Rightfully so. And, the kid from New England going to be on Fox promoting the sport that he loves to try to grow our audience so that everybody within the industry, the racers without sponsors and the announcers and everybody can continue to work in the field that they love. Don't mess this one up, Brian.
Well, listen, it's unique. I was talking to somebody about this a couple weeks ago, but it is fairly unique in this play-by-play line of work where name another sport where like a pro announcer gets to go back to literally the place he started to be on national television calling a professional sport. Like Joe Buck didn't start calling the NFL from NFL stadiums, it's kind of a cool thing where it's a little bit of a one-off. But yeah, New England Dragway, little place, sometimes a little rough around the edges, but my God, I love it. And I hope you guys all watch this weekend or show up and have fun.
This has been Lunch with the Lohnes. Brian, thank you very much for spending a little time with us on a Thursday. We'll let you go get ready to head up there. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming on WFO Radio, NHRA Insider Podcast. Someone mentioned Dorkomotive. You're also multiple podcasts. That one's like a history, events that happen that involve machines and very cool stuff. So our podcast listeners, those of you on audio only, listen, subscribe and write a review for Brian's stuff and NHRA Insider, Dorkomotive, etc., and so on. Brian, thank you very much. Always fun. No beers this time, but that means next time we'll definitely do it.
We will have beers, Joe.
We will have beers.
Better. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Brian Lohnes with us on WFO Radio. Thank you, Brian. Put your comments in the comment section. Final comments before we get up on out of here and head to the airport tomorrow morning, bright and early, headed to Baston. And then up to, I like the idea, Joe Morrison. Good job with the Racers to the Rescue deal. Do an event, a pre-race event at a place, Telly's. I love it. But put your comments in the comment section now. What can you do here on WFO Radio to help us? That's really what it's all about. Our sponsors like Total Seal Piston Rings, the leader in ring seal technology, Matt Hartford's business venture /sponsor / many other things. Got a new episode of Hidden Horsepower when you're doing the podcast thing, going after Dorkomotive or NHRA Insider. Certainly, I would hope you have already subscribed to WFO Radio's podcast, which is really the audio experience of this. And you have to understand that primarily we are an audio experience because I feel for the people who are the over-the-road truckers. They can't be watching something on a video screen. People working in a machine shop, working in a shop, want to be listening to something. I come out of talk radio, right? So we do audio podcasts, but the video is just amazing, the technology and the interaction with all you folks out there on social, YouTube, WFO Radio TV, etc. So we have got an audio-only podcast. Larry Wallace from Penske South and many other ventures in the world of NASCAR. I can tell you, you're going to love it. 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, it will drop. And follow Hidden Horsepower. Great stuff talking with Lake Speed and Keith Jones and Hartford about what's coming up. We're going to have a live episode, another live episode on their Facebook page and group coming up. I guess it is June 24th with Billy Godbold from Comp Cam. So if you want to know about camshafts, all coming up. And it's all thanks to Total Seal piston rings. Go to totalseal.com to find out more. Samtech.edu, the School of Automotive Machinists and Technology. Brian Massengill, Linda Judson. They put together a school. The story is great. They were a guest on Hidden Horsepower. Judd was. And he said, like, man, there weren't enough machinists that could do what I needed them to do. And Linda's like, let's start a school. And the rest is history. And if you're the next generation, if you want to be involved in this sport, if you want to help keep it going, crew chief, crew member, all of those things, go to samtech.edu and tell them you heard about it on WFO Radio. Frank Hawley also helping. You noticing the trend? We are working so hard, all of us, I like to think that I am, to try to bring new people into the sport. And you can't fall in love with drag racing the way so many racers have until you have the experience of driving a dragster. That can be you. Courses start at $399 courses. It's an experience. You make 3 runs, 1 half track, 2 full track passes on the dragster adventure. You show up with nothing and you leave with an amazing experience that is going to change your life. I can still remember the first time I smashed the throttle on a dragster, meaning engine behind the driver, single seat, dragster. A lot of people out there in the world call any car that goes down the drag strip a dragster. That's not the case. Of course, us insiders, we know that. But driving a dragster chassis is just totally different than anything you've experienced in your life. And how many people get to drive a single seater other than a go-kart? Not many. So Frank has created that experience and it is amazing. It'll change your life. And then Marvin Rodak. The thing I love about Marvin's stuff is it shows up to your house and you enjoy it at home and it's amazing. Coffee, hot sauce, spice rub, barbecues, grilling tools, tips, recipes. The guy's incredible. He's out there on our social. 817-924-6821. Marvin Rodak and rodakscoffeeandgrills.com. Thank you, Marvin. And it's next level stuff, folks. It's not cheap vacuum packed coffee for the most basic instinct of your coffee needs. It's next level stuff. Check them out, Marvin Rodak. Now, our WFO Radio store on WFOradio.com. Face coverings, still a thing in many places. Still a thing. Good to have one. Good to have one where you are. When you can fly on a plane, when you can go in public transit. $10. I throw in some stickers. I throw in a patch. I saw Sue Morris has already sewn her patch and created like women's wear with her stuff. It was actually Dave Morris who did it. But the bottom line is the WFO store, we got hats, we got a bunch of stuff. It's ever expanding. And the presentation of the WFO store, it's going to get better, guys. Click some links. We're using PayPal. You can pay with a credit card and I ship it out. That's the hardest part, all the compliance. But if you're going to go to the track and the Nitrofish trailer is there, that's where you get your WFO Radio 10th anniversary t-shirt. Go see Tamra and Keelan. And shout out WFO, and they'll know exactly what shirt you want. That's a big part of the WFO experience because I got to say, I always go by there. I go by the Nitrofish trailer. And I've been doing it wrong a little bit, like on the web, buy on the web, right? Wrong, big mistake, but I've learned from my mistake. No, you guys are the listeners. If you're going to the race, part of going to the race is going to the Nitrofish trailer if they're going to be there, not just New England, wherever they happen to be, because, you know, different races, different trailers, but go get your WFO Radio 10th anniversary t-shirt at the Nitrofish trailer and have that experience because, you know, Tamara's amazing and Keelan is cool. And I always say, we sell any shirts? We sell any shirts? And typically we always sell a couple of shirts, which is awesome. And I'm in an, you know, unofficial competition with other racers to see if, you know, we sell as many shirts as they do. Because how crazy would that be, right? For the little podcast that could WFO Radio that's been around for 10 years. What a couple weeks we've had with Brian Loans and Alan Reinhart. Just amazing stuff. Steve Torrance yesterday, Brett Kepner, Robert Height last week. My goodness. You know what you could really do to help the show? Serious now. You know, every once in a while, I look right into the camera and I ask for help. Not afraid. Share the show. Tell your friends. Copy and paste the link. You got a guy or a girl that loves drag racing, that watches the show on Fox, but maybe doesn't know about WFO. tell somebody. And they'll see their favorite driver at some point. And they'll be able to interact. And I like to think we have a good time here. So do that. Share the show. All right, let's get to the final comments. Let's see what the comments are after that wonderful experience with Lohnes. Love having Lohnes. Good job, Blake. Love having Lohnes on the show because it's informative and educational and fun. All right, let's see. Krista Baldwin will be watching, Brian. Where are you going to be, Krista? Greek runner-up here in 2006 to Bobby Lagana. Come on, Krista. Well, Krista's what, I get it. When's your next race, Krista? Great interview. Always love listening to Brian. He's great. Good luck this weekend, Joe. Again, Nitro Joe Morrison going to be out there with Jim Campbell at Telly's tonight, 7 p.m. Racers to the rescue. Tell him you heard about it on WFO radio. Steve Brenwald. Oh, don't drop an F-bomb like someone did a couple of days ago. Why you got to go backwards? Why you got to do that? It was bound to happen, right? I'm glad it wasn't me. It's happened with me before. Not the F-bomb, not fudge, not that. The only good ESPN had was amazing intro theme. I don't know, man. I thought ESPN, they had moments. They had some good moments. I'm a here now kind of guy, though. And I really think that Fox is doing a great job with the scheduling of the shows. And I've been able to get to know a lot of the people behind the scenes and just so many good things. Like speaking of podcasts, there's the African American Racers Association podcast that is on there. And they don't do like the most intense promotional deal, but Sarah Slaughter and Laura Adams are on this week's show. Sarah is behind the scenes at John Force Racing, and Lauren Adams is one of the most talented people that you will ever hear of. And they are talking about behind-the-scenes work at NHRA and at Fox and on the TV broadcast and all of these things. That's the point, is the team now totally gets it and wants to do as good a job, not for themselves, that's part of it, but for the sport of drag racing, because I think we all believe that this sport still has room to run, room to grow. It's interesting. It's compelling. It's amazing. And those of us who love it, we love it so much. How could we possibly be wrong? Other people will be interested. They just need the right people to show them what's up. And I think we got the right people in place. I do. One of the best shows of the year so far. Thank you, Jay. Jay, you've said that on the last 5 shows, Jay. You got to pick one, Jay. You can't always say that this is the best show of the year ever before. Or maybe you can. Thank you for saying that. It means we're doing it right. Mail carriers, etc. Thank you, Keith. Keith is a mail carrier. And he's got his own side gig. Check it out. Catio Kids. Like cats on a patio, catio. Do it. I'm not cheap with the plugs here. Telly's 235, Calif Highway, Epping. Do it. Go see Nitro Joe Morrison. Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Joe. And Joe sent me great pictures. He was out there at ADCO. And this guy, let me tell you about Nitro Joe Morrison real quick. Right? Joe Morrison befriended me a long time ago. I have no idea how long. And he said flat out, my goal is to drive a nitro car, a top fuel car someday. And this is the plan that I have created to make this happen. And there have been times where, whatever it was, like the time he was driving an altered at Maple Grove and the thing got up on 2 wheels and he did the right thing and saved the show. Like hundreds of little examples of Nitro Joe Morrison doing a great job with COPD and Right to Breathe and all of this. And I love when someone tells me they're going to do something and they do it. And he's doing it. And Leverage Racing and that team from Michigan, like they don't get enough credit, Joe. And I'm going to try to do a better job, Joe, because the Leverage Racing team, they're coming forward. They're making it happen. They got 50 years in the books as drag racers out there. And now they got Joe. And Joe is not saying no. And Joe is doing everything he can. And he said he would, and he did. And I just love that story. We need you at more races, Joe. That's it. Let's see, Jeff. Maybe you need Brett and Brian on one show. It would only take about 3 hours. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, but that's what we have. We have a lot of time on WFO. We need more listeners. We always want more listeners and every one of you to share it, man. Share the WFO radio, at very least the YouTube channel and Facebook page. But yeah, Brett has said he'll come back, and I know Brian will come back, and so it's as simple as that. Then the drag strip project that Brett was talking about that we never really got to because battery died, that was my bad. should have told him full battery. Joe, we do have a Facebook Live show. We would love to have you as a guest. You can reach out to me on my Facebook page, or I am, so we can get you scheduled. That would be wonderful, Facebook user, except I don't know who you are. But that's okay. You can reach out to me on I am and do it. Like Jerron Settles has already got me scheduled on a show with Pete Sanka and some others, Lucas Oil Series racers. I always say yes when people invite me on their show. Slam and Sam had me on his podcast. I love being a guest. I should be angry I don't get more opportunities, but I'm not. My parents and I will be watching the Epping race at my pastor's house. He used to like drag racing, but didn't know much about it. Within the past year, I've gotten him to love it. Now he watches them. Oh, man, we should introduce him to Craig Garland and get everybody together. Yes. Well, the evangelical nature of the drag racer is unrivaled. Thank you, Joe, says Jay. Blake says you can also wear face masks when they mow the yard. Right. That's when I wear my face mask, y'all, when I mow the lawn. Now, the promotional opportunities are less because there's nobody there, but I don't breathe in stuff. Like, look, I know a lot of people view these face masks as directly tied to the pandemic, which we all want to move past and forget. But there are some times where they will come in handy. So get one, $10, WFO. They just keep getting better. That's all. Thank you very much, Jay. I appreciate you saying that. And Jay is a Patreon. We got a lot of Patreons out there. Patreon.com/WFO radio for people who want to join our VIP members club. Yes, it costs some money. You have to pay some money every week. How much you pay is pretty much up to you. And the product that everybody gets is pretty much the same. It's all bent on what you can do. What can you do to help WFO radio? And I can tell you that our Patreons have taken on the internet bill here at WFO radio and have done a great job. And they get special shows and special content and special stuff because they're part of the VIP membership club. Keith, he's on there too, which is why I'm happy to shout out his stuff. And we're always adding Patreons, by the way, patreon.com/WFO radio. It's been pretty amazing. I don't push it as much as I should, but I should push it more. I should push everything more. Monica, going to miss you at AGCO, Joe Morrison, but so glad to see you racing NHRA. Yeah, exactly. Matt and Linda Hanley, Leverage Racing coming to Epping for fans. They deserve it. We're spending a lot of money to get out there and keep the show going. We're ready. They are spending a lot of money. Everyone's spending a lot of money, but they need more money. And that's the thing about Top Fuel Racing. Will do. Thank you very much. The thing about Top Fuel Racing is it's very expensive. This thing is a very expensive deal. But for the money, you are creating something, and you're creating all kinds of positive energy and opportunity and forming connections with people who are doers and movers and shakers and willing to go out there and push your product. So let's say you've got a big company and you're looking to sponsor someone like Joe Morrison would be a great guy to get on board with. Because he's going to go all the way for you. And that's something I like to think we try to do here at WFO Radio in the sport of drag racing. You know you're going to have fans that root for an underdog. It's just the nature of our sport. Thanks to Brian Lone for coming on and spending lunch with us. Lunch with Loans. What did you think of this 12 o'clock show? And I always end up running out of material right around an hour and 20 minutes. An hour for the guest, 20 minutes for me. I'll be jumping on a big bird tomorrow, heading to Beantown, then right to the track. Someone had asked, yeah, we got a night session on Friday, 3 sessions of qualifying. It's going to be great. Thank you to everybody out there. And thank you to the WFO universe. You guys always support, and we appreciate you. It's been an interesting week, to say the least, with Steve Torrance and the Facebook page takeover. I thought that was really good. You, Kev, let's all go WFO and have a safe weekend. I agree. You, Kev. Kev from the UK. You, Kev. Later, Blake. Blake says he liked the lunch show. I like the lunch show, too, because now I got the rest of the day to pack my bags. Free flight. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Remember, subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Hidden Horsepower, a whole bunch of podcasts. Try them out. And big thanks to our sponsors, Total Seal, Sam Tech, Frank Hawley's, and Marvin Rodak. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time on WFO Radio.